You mean like sort of on...
I guess I love you.
Tragedy struck.
I see you haven't lost your touch.
And away we go. Welcome, nerds and nerdettes and everybody in between to the latest episode of the Nerdcast right here on Project Nerd. I am one of your co-hosts, Iggy, joined by...
Galo Gutierrez, the Dark Lord of Project Nerd. How's everybody doing?
I'm doing great, and I hope our guest is doing great. I don't think we should waste any more time. We should just pull her on in, and it's the wonderful and talented Grace Hahn.
Hello, Grace. This
is where the crowd's like, insert crowd noises like we're live in the studio.
Oh, as if anyone would cheer for me. I'm supposed to be in the background.
No, everybody cheer. And I was just actually, as I was saying that, just it was weird for so long to get used to watching like shows, like late night shows and variety shows without audiences. And now
wasn't that bizarre? And you'd hear sparse clapping from like the studio crew. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's weird though to see them going back in the studio just because I've gotten like I've adjusted and now I'm like, wait a second, this is a shock.
A new kind of awkwardness.
Right.
Yeah, it was weird. I'm a wrestling nerd. So for about a year, they were doing a lot of these, shows with no audiences at first. And then the higher production shows like WWE actually had just rows and rows and rows of monitors. Wow. And you could actually, it was like a Zoom call. You could actually go online,
that's cool,
get a seat and be in the show. But, and it was just a year and it was just so weird.
At least there was noise and presence.
There was, but you knew it was all studio because, these monitors obviously weren't wired for sound. They were just showing people's faces, as they're reacting. And the first few shows was kind of funny because people were doing the sign thing or the, not so made for TV T-shirts and then they cracked down on all of that. But it was interesting for sure.
I wonder how the wrestlers felt about that.
Yeah, because that's a very crowd interactive type thing.
Yeah,
it
absolutely is.
A lot of performance.
Correct. Right. It must have just felt like practice, I guess, to them. Even though they were still trying to sell it, it's got to be difficult because crowd reaction is a big part of that.
Right. Well, we can talk more wrestling, but let's go back to...
I can talk wrestling all
right, I don't. It'll be mostly Galo talking, but I want to introduce Grace. You're a Chicago-based producer who's completed a number of projects. We met you a few years back at Tallgrass for what we always talk about. Anytime a Tallgrass alum comes on one of these podcasts, we go down memory lane because it's such a fun festival and we make such meaningful relationships. But one of the more interesting things, which I think, we'll get around to some detail on, only what we can, but was you were working on a recent project, reached out looking for a place to shoot, and it ended up being we ended up setting you up with Gallo's place, and it's just crazy that Galo, that you guys connected, and I guess what Galo, your like childhood home, your parents' home is going to.
I was going to say not just his home, but like his childhood home, the home that he grew up in. Like he knew every corner of that house, and I just kept thinking this must be so out of this world to have all. It
was pretty nostalgic, I would point out, this was my bedroom. This was where I used to do this. This is where this was, upstairs is exactly the same, but we actually grew up down here, and Grace, what was funny was that you met Iggy at Tallgrass.
Yes.
Okay. And then I knew nothing about Grace Hahn. And all of a sudden Iggy sends me your post. And your post says, we're looking for a vacant building, a 2-flat, Chicago style, flat in Chicago. And I'm like, this is so funny. They met over here. The message got all the way out to Colorado, and from Colorado, it came back to me, and you and I are practically neighbors.
Yeah. So nearby. And I'm like, that's kind of what I love about, I'll harp on Tallgrass again, but then also like just Project Nerd. I'm like the folks I've met there. Now I have all these contacts in like Nebraska, Montana, Kansas, like all these folks that I know in all these different regional places who are all kind of on the same team and interested in the same stuff. So it's like, I think it's such a cool, lucky thing that we have going on.
It is. Thank you for the compliment. But yes, the Project Nerd is it, and it's great because we are such an army of nerds that we're able to do that. That it's, if we didn't have the army we did, even if I saw your message, I might have been like, well, I can't do anything about that all the way out here in Colorado. But Galo's also notorious for being the one who I go to and being like, Galo, this is what we need, and then it just happened. So I'm glad it worked out for you as well. That's
they call that a fixer.
A fixer.
Yes.
Yeah. I was gonna say we have to stay vague about what Galo does as well.
Yeah, it's funny. It's like in all of my descriptions in Project Nerd, it's like everything.
The guy
does everything.
Yeah, and actually, I mean, when we talk about relationships like that, Galo, you even ended up working for a convention in Omaha after you came out to an event with us here in Denver and met that guy who runs that convention there. So then Galo became the floor manager for an Omaha convention. It's just,
so rad.
I think one thing about it is, and Grace, I wonder if you feel this way too, is to some degree, for so many generations, the nerd culture was the outsider. So even though we've, our culture has kind of come mainstream, and my kids are growing up in a completely different world than I did, it's still that mentality of we all look out for each other because that's really what the earlier nerds had to do,
Oh, 1,000%. And I think about like, well, I was a 90s kid, so I was always like doing the chat rooms and stuff, like very early internet, but my dad was a computer guy. So me and my siblings were always really into it. And so we were watching anime. We were, trying to watch, all the Adult Swim cartoons and just finding places to talk about it on chat rooms and like going on Neopets and RuneScape and finding chats to talk to other people about it. And I'm like, that's where it starts. And that's kind of what it still is. It's just bigger,
Right.
Oh, you guys are so lucky. I'm an 80s kid. I had to hang out in the comic book stores. And, it was like we would run after school. There'd be like 4 or 5 of us going to see what was new and hang out with, the guy, when you watch The Simpsons, the guy that's always at the comic book store. Yep. We had that guy. And that's not like, I mean, that's the one thing about these things. It's like you look at them and you're like, holy crap. They're like hitting it right on the head with how it was, dudes, what's up? That was always the guy behind the counter at the comic book store.
Comic book guy, right?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that's just what he's called too. So it's comic book guy. I know.
I missed out on that.
Yeah, so it was different. And then, the arcades was the other thing we had, and the malls just started being big. So that's where we would meet up. But we had to go to different things and find our people and be with our people,
Yeah, without the internet.
Without the internet. The one thing that has remained consistent over the decades, though, is going to the movies. And Grace, how did you I'm assuming you fell in love with that enough to want to work on projects. What brought you into actually saying, I need to do these things?
Yeah, I actually, unfortunately, I'm not the classic movie nerd, but I'm a little bit more, I think I'm more like a culture nerd. So I was definitely more into like the off-kilter media when I was growing up, stuff that was hard to find at the library and see on broadcast TV. So a little more indie leaning already when I was younger. And I grew up in Dayton, Ohio, which is not really not the bustling metropolis that Chicago is. And there was one indie theater down there. And when I started, my first job was down at the AAA team that plays under the Reds. And so I worked at the stadium, and sometimes I would catch a movie on the way home at this little theater. And I started seeing this stuff that I knew I was never going to see anywhere else. This was pre-Netflix being a big thing. And I was like, seeing these foreign movies. And not that I was pretentious about it, but more that I was just like, I'm not going to see this anywhere else. I have to go see it. I have to go see it here. And not knowing that I was patronizing a theater that really needed, the support at that time. And ultimately, I think the movie that I saw there that I was so drawn to was Short Term 12. if you remember that movie from 2006 or something. It's all about these like it's these counselors at a teen like recovery center for these really broken teen kids who just really needed some kind of like support. And of course, being a teen myself and being a nerd in my own mind, as much as I was in real life too, it was like I remember that being the movie that was really powerful to me. And I was like, wow, to tell a story like this sounds just really empowering. And so that's kind of what started the thing.
Well, that cast too, like, so this
Yes.
is an early movie for many of the. So I'm gonna name this cast, and people are gonna be like,
that's
how
what I
is
was
that
just
an
looking at
independent
too.
movie? You're right. They're gonna be like,
Yeah.
how is that independent? And you have to
What?
remember, this was before most of them grew up. But Brie Larson, Rami Malek, you have Stephanie Beatriz from Brooklyn Nine-Nine. Lakeith Stanfield has really started to do some things recently too. Yeah, this is ridiculous. This cast, like, it's unbelievable.
And that was all of their first little coming out.
Right.
And I happened to see it in this tiny theater in Dayton, Ohio, and being like, wow, look at these cool people. So it wasn't the like Star Wars George Lucas
right
to Jesus. It was more like
Captain Marvel yet. Right?
It was more like, we can do it too.
Yeah.
I think that's cool because it coincides with the conversation I was having last night about when you look back at careers of people, and which absolutely is probably the wrong adjective because it's in the title too. Absolutely Fabulous, the British comedy series, oddly liked even as a young man. Like, I'm not the target audience, loved it. And apparently Idris Elba in the mid 90s was a very young actor on some of the episodes. And I was like, what? Like, I'd say
that's amazing.
It just made me realize, like, you're talking this independent, smaller project. Budget was $1 million, by the way, is what I have pulled up here. And Brie Larson's like your main cast, and now she's like one of the anchors of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, right? Like,
crazy,
right? And Rami Malek's going to be in the brand new James Bond movie,
and he played Freddie Mercury.
Oh yeah. So he's, I mean, there's that too.
Can you imagine in the one decade, a decade and a half, these people their lives are completely different. That's wild to think about.
Right. And then Lakeith Stanfield, we were just talking about him. Like, I'm pretty sure he was not this past year, but the year before, the nominations for acting. Right.
Oh yeah. He's
Judas and the Black Messiah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, these people have gone on. So great job on seeing their early movies, because then people were like, hey, these people
saw them before they were cool.
Right. You're like, not to be hipster or anything. But Galo, what do you have something like that? You love this world too. And I know
I do.
You don't create movies, but we create and we love it. So what was that thing?
You know what? Actually, I can't bounce that far back, but there was something that put it all together for me.
Okay.
Because when I was growing up, it was a lot of and they were super cool to me. It was the super action, type movies with the Rambos and the Terminators and the Conan the Barbarians and all that big era with Van Damme and Schwarzenegger and Balboa and all those guys. But Sylvester Stallone. But the one movie that kind of went way back and then just brought it all together was a movie that came out in 2015. And Iggy, you'll probably remember because our guy Stephen K. Smith was a part of the props for that. It was the Turbo Kid. And if you have not seen the Turbo Kid, it is the craziest, most fun movie I have ever seen. The only actor that's recognizable from that is probably Michael Ironside, who plays the bad guy. And then it's just like, it's dystopian, but it's silly and it's, crazy bicycle chase scenes.
It's ridiculously fantastic.
It is ridiculously amazing. And it just really does. My wife is not big on this. She's more of the classical, she's more of the reader. She loves to read books, and sometimes to her, when a book is transformed into a movie, it's missing a lot, and so it's very few movies that could actually hit the same audience as the book lover. And she sat through the Turbo Kid with me, and at the end she was like, that was amazing. And I was like, no way. I thought it was just me.
Oh, that's great.
You speak of classics, so I think that's where it came from me. My parents were they were always on again, off again. So it was always a weird, like not a bad house situation, but a weird house situation. It's like, oh, dad lives with us again for 6 months and then he's gone. But both of them shared an interest in movies. We didn't watch a lot of TV. They didn't do a lot of, they were sports fanatics to the core, but you could open up that old wood looking, like you push the side of the entertainment center open and all the VHS cases were there. And I just remember sitting down with my family and watching old Humphrey Bogart movies and was like, this makes me want to just do anything around all entertainment. More for me though, and which Galo, we've published our own comics with Project Nerd. That was more of that, was being at the comic store and being that 10-year-old to be like, I want to create my own comic. And it was the comics, I think, really what pulled me into creativity, because it was right around, speaking of being a 90s kid, when Image Comics was like, all those independent creators were like, we're not going to play by the DC and Marvel rules. We're going to go start our own thing. And I was like, I'm 11 and I'm going to go start my own thing. And 20 years later, I guess it panned out. So
that's amazing. It's all about having an example though. And I'm going to do like a weird tie-in, but now that I'm thinking about it, I'm also like, I think when I first heard your question, I was thinking about what kind of engaged me in the making of movies. And
still good answer, but yeah.
Yeah. But now I'm also thinking about, because my folks, we didn't have cable growing up, and my folks would always have us watch whatever random movie was on syndicated, like on whatever off broadcast channel. And every Sunday they would just have on one channel, and I can't remember what it was. They would just have these B movie, like horror movies playing all day. And so the range of bizarre, like Attack of the Giant Cockroaches and like what's
Killer
Carnival
Tomatoes.
of Souls, Carnival of Souls is one of my favorite movies. And so that type of thing, that kind of was the pave the way. Like those were the people who were like the Image Comics people who were like, yeah, let's just do something really weird and people will watch it and they'll love it. And then, and that I think is kind of a really bold and great way to get into creating things and creating movies as well.
Now, Grace, what brought you to Illinois, to the Chicagoland area? Was it school?
It was school. Yeah. I actually would have gone to some Ohio public school, but my folks lived in Evanston randomly for a couple of years after they graduated university back in the 80s. And my dad was like, there's this school called Northwestern, like maybe you should apply there. I was like, okay. And I applied.
This is little school, Northwestern.
Somehow they were like, oh, cool. Yeah, come on up here. And I'm very grateful for that. I have a lot of things to say about Northwestern on either side of the scale, but just the coolest people and the most enriching people I could have met in my entire life I met there. And so that was, and being in the vicinity of Chicago and the movie making scene here was just incredibly lucky.
So now after you finish school, do you stay up here or do you go back home or do you travel to other places?
If I had money, I would be traveling everywhere. But I was sadly in the spot where I needed to hunker down and get work, and I didn't want to go back to Ohio. I think, who knows if that's in the cards, but I don't want to go back now. But I found enough work here, and the alternative was to go to one of the coasts, go to New York or go to LA, and I just wasn't down to be fighting big battles to try and get jobs, which a lot of my cohort is still doing. A lot of them are very successful in what they're doing, but a lot of them are still kind of fighting. And I found the community here to be tight enough, and I think a little more transparent, so that I was able to get jobs and continue working, despite being, recent grad or whatever. So, yeah.
Well, I think you touch on a huge thing there. We have a lot of people who have an interest in Project Nerd and watch these things or listen to more so listen to the podcast. And they're people that we've ran into at panels, and they're always asking questions of how to get into things. And it's such a different world now that you don't have to be in LA or New York anymore.
Yes.
Like, you don't. There are certain things that are definitely there, but like you said, you can find those communities in a multitude of metros areas and really start to develop what you're doing.
Yeah, I think
sounds like
Chicago's be better off for it. Yeah.
Yeah.
The regional thing is really happening right now. And I think COVID even exacerbated that, because everyone had to be just coming from where they were sitting. It truly did not matter where you were. So I think that's like a great equalizer in like to make the best of a horrible situation. It's like, this is something we can glean from it that I think is pretty cool.
Right. Awesome.
So Grace, you end up putting out this Facebook post. Iggy reads it. It comes out to me. We end up connecting and being able to give you exactly what it is that you guys were looking for.
Crazy.
And so that now we meet, and everybody comes out to do the walkthroughs and everything else. And what I remember, one of the conversations that we had early on, I was like, we had to do something or meet up, and all of a sudden you're like, I'm sorry, I had to run out of the office because they told me to go find them a dog.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yes. This is a really good story. Is this where you were going with it?
Yeah, I want the story.
Oh, you want the story? Okay.
Shockingly, I wasn't producing this project, but I was actually in accounting on a show. And I totally forgot that happened. This is a really funny story. I was in my office drowning in paperwork and clickety-clacking on my, calculator. And then my friend, who was the office manager, comes in and he goes, "So, how long would it take you to pick up your dog and go to the Foster Beach?" And I was like, "To hang out? Like, why?" And he was like, "Well, we're filming there today, and they paid like $3,000 for this dog to like do this one specific thing, which is like sit up in a car window." And then they were like, "This dog is just not sitting up in a car window." And so I had to go get my dog from daycare, and on like this super hot day, and I drive this old Corolla with no AC. And so I was like sweating, and I kind of didn't even want to do it because I was supposed to go meet Galo, but they were like, "You would save the day if you do this thing." And so I like sweaty brought my dog to set, who's just a gigantic derp. And he happily just popped up in that little window, and they finished it in 15 minutes. But that is indeed the reason that I didn't meet you the first time we were supposed to meet. And I remember that's every time that type of thing happens, which it happens so often in production, and it's always the most random thing. I find that if you're actually honest about what you're doing, like sometimes I'm like, "Hey, I just need to find an air mattress. I'm going to be an hour late." Or,
Yeah.
I need to find someone who breeds cacti. Give me a second. But that's the type of thing that happens. So that was the dog that I had to find, was my own dog.
Yeah. That was great because I was like, she's finding a dog?
I felt
But I'm
so
like,
bad.
all right. Okay. I mean,
I've had worst excuses to blow me off, is what Galo was thinking.
Yeah, I was thinking, wow. I mean, I don't even think she made that up.
There you go. I was like, please don't think I'm blowing you off. My dog got to be on camera, and I think I showed up later that afternoon. Thankfully, you were around. So
Yeah, it did work out. But it was funny.
The dog became a star in between, so it all worked
Yes.
out for sure.
Absolutely.
I think it's fun because you mentioned that story, Galo, the episode we did a couple weeks ago, where very troublesome start for their production, but ended up coming together because of that. Like an actress just the day before couldn't come and film, and so they had to. And they're like, we ended up finding an actress that was doing things behind the scenes and much better and all this stuff. It's just. It feels like every time we sit down with somebody, Gallo, there's stories like that for days about like, it's just, this twist, this turn, and this, you got to be quick on your feet to be in that industry. That's for sure.
And it's always with productions that are very limited in money and time, which are the two hardest things to navigate around if you think about it. And it's just like, it's like, wait, no, this really has to go this wrong before everything comes out right. Yeah. And it's all like, okay, but we have like 2 weeks. We don't have months. We have like 2 weeks.
I sometimes think being in this industry, it's like you kind of set out to put yourself in between a rock and a hard place. Because it's like with every decision, you're kind of like, I should say no, but I want to say yes. And you usually end up saying yes and have to scramble. And that's kind of I think why, I don't know, that's probably why I kept getting jobs around here, was just because I think I'm like, life is such a crapshoot to begin with. It's kind of like I'm down to just go into something where there may not be a lot of answers to a bunch of crazy questions and just figure it out as you go, because that attitude is pretty important to take into, especially independent production, where, as you said, not a lot of money, not a lot of time, oftentimes not a lot of people.
Right.
So Grace, go ahead, Iggy. Sorry.
Well, no, it's all right. I was just going to say, I think with Project Nerd that I've found, whether it be on the production side, anything we're creating, the more times we end up saying yes, even when I'm like, I just don't want to. Usually it ends up blossoming something, either a new relationship, a new, connection, like you said, or just new opportunities that you didn't have before. So it's always like, I don't want to do this. But if I say yes, and then like a week later, you're like, I'm so glad I said yes to that, because it led to this opportunity, right?
It's the kind of thing where, like, when you're old and you're in your rocking chair and you're like, and you look back, you're like, wow, good thing I did that instead of being lame and saying no or whatever.
So now, Grace, we started talking about how you ended up using my parents' vacant flat for a recent project, and it's still relatively in its infancy as it's being produced and edited and everything else. I know we can't talk much about what's actually happening. What is the title of the film?
The film is called Restless.
Restless. Okay. And you were the line producer in that one?
Correct.
So tell us what was, as a line producer, what was your main role with this production?
Great question. The role changes depending on the size of the production and, where it's coming from and how big the crew is. I actually ended up doing, location management, accounting, and all the hiring, all the crew hiring. And then it's basically just day-to-day maintenance. If you think about like a GM, maybe if you've worked in like food service, like the GM or the manager, which really is like an eyes on everything type of person, that's kind of the role of the line producer. The typical, like I would say, people call it a capital P producer, is oftentimes like big umbrella stuff. They give yeses and nos when they need specific questions, but those real specifics are dealt with on like the ground level. And so I suppose that's probably the best way to describe what a line producer would be doing, or at least what I was doing on this project. So I was still like, ordering the porta potty and like having them come clean the porta potty. But I was also like, booking talent flights and making sure all the crew had the things and the money that they needed in order to do their jobs. So kind of the go-to. I'm a bit of a mom, like time on set. So even though I'm not like the most caring demeanor, oftentimes people are just like, if they're too nervous to ask anyone else, they'll just ask me for something. And I usually, again, I'll be like, probably no, but I'll say yes anyways.
So you are actually the behind the scenes foundation of a lot of this project, because if something
on the ground level, yeah,
there is no, you are plan A, plan B, and plan C. Make it happen.
Yes, in a scary and exhilarating way.
Yeah, I'm sure, because it's just like I noticed it and I saw it, and all these people come together. And, it's like Grace is in the middle and Grace says, you do this, you do this, you do this, and I'm out because I got other things to do. And everybody just like, well, Grace said. So, and it happened.
Mom
and
said.
Mom said. And I mean, now, so you're doing, you guys are limited in time. Obviously, you're limited in a budget. You got this flat that works out for what you guys are doing. But it's also a lot of little obstacles.
Absolutely.
I mean, we can talk about those things because it involved my house, my family, and everything else. And Iggy, you'd enjoy this too because it was great because my parents are, in their 70s. They got this little dog with them, and they are just like, wow. And actually the talent changing room was upstairs, right?
For a few of the days, yeah, when we had more talent, and which I'll tell you, I've said this so many times before and I'll say it again. Galo's parents are angels, absolute angels. And I had so much, it was so joyful to like get to know them, but also just know that they were really sharing their space with us out of the kindness and excitement of what we were doing. And that's like mind blowing. So yes, even part of the production ended up taking place in their part of the unit, which was just so gracious and amazing.
So there's my dad, Iggy. It's hot. It's summer. My parents' building is very, very traditional, very old school. Chicago hardwood floors, the layout with the bedrooms on one side and the living room, dining room, and kitchen on the other side, long narrow hallway, and no central air. And my dad's like, I need your help. He's called now my dad's part of the production. Okay. So he's calling me and he's like, I need your help. And I go, why? What's up? He goes, we need the air conditioners upstairs because the guy that's in the movie is up here and he's changing and they're going to be coming up here and we need the air conditioners. So there it is. I know that filming's going on because, I show up to help my dad with the air conditioners. And obviously you have the one person outside that tells everybody when filming is happening. So as everyone just shuts up. And I'm like, okay, now I'm going to walk this air conditioner. Don't fall. Because it's a window unit. And I'm pulling these 2 window units up, but it had to get done.
Oh my God.
My dad and my mom were panicking.
I think our dear Lucinda, who was my on-set coordinator, who was kind of if I had to leave set, because I often had to leave set to take care of paperwork, payroll, because I didn't have any space on set for me to like sit down and do things.
Right.
So, and I remember Lucinda she would always just call me so sweetly, and she was like, we need some air conditioners. And I'm like, don't we have air conditioners? Like, I'm paying a lot of money for air conditioners. And she's like, we need some more. And like, honestly, just bless you and your parents and just so willing to bring those lug those air conditioners up the stairs while we're asking you to be quiet.
Be quiet. It had to get done.
Yeah. That's the trials and tribulations, though. That's how.
I mean, yeah, because you don't have that luxury. I mean, there isn't the big studio behind you. This is just literally somebody's garage, backyard, and apartment.
Yes,
You know. So, but it was a lot of fun to see. You know. So, tell us, Grace, what stage is this production at now?
Yeah, sadly, I can't give too much detail, but I can say something like we're hoping to have everything completed by the end of the year, and hoping to have it viewable on your laptops in the first quarter of next year, and hopefully that will all come to pass without difficulty.
That's not too far. Are we allowed to say the one sentence plot detail that's on IMDb?
Oh, if it's on IMDb, say it.
A Chicago ghost story about isolation.
Ooh.
Does that sound about
That's
right?
not even our full log line. That's great. I love it.
Yeah,
It actually is. And
pulls you in.
I keep pitching because after the 2 years, the year and a half, how long has it even been? I don't know.
We all lost track of time early 2020.
Yeah, it's been nuts.
That we've had in lockdown and quarantine, and whether or not you're with someone, there's some kind of loneliness, isolation, discomfort that I feel like we're still feeling it a little bit, even though maybe we're getting a little bit back to our regular lives. It's very bizarre. And I think it really was part of this movie to try and capture that feeling of just really being in the thick of it.
That'll be interesting for sure. Then the relatable pieces of it. I can say you're definitely right. We did our first big convention since all of this has happened, and we do a lot of conventions in different capacities. But it had been almost exactly 2 years since we had done like our full blown, where we have a big setup, we moderate panels, we're behind the scenes doing all this stuff, and we get there. And I can tell you what it was. We show up and we have our like initial meeting, and everybody's like, yeah, I've had so much anxiety all week of being around people again and all that. And by the end of the day, Friday, I think we all felt a lot better about it. But it was just really, I think, like you said, it's this feeling of not even that we've had this feeling for so long, but I think additionally too, now it's like, I'm super extroverted. I know Galo's super extroverted and everything like that. But now I'm also kind of like, I used to just dive in, and now I'm like, I guess I'll get my toes wet first, if that makes sense.
Right.
Before diving back in.
You want to be careful. Yeah.
Right? It's just crazy to adjust back to everything. And you touched on some big things about it. So I'm really curious now, more without you have given too much away, how Restless really will probably make us feel some of those feelings again, I guess.
I think it will, and it definitely touches on the digital world that we live in, and it touches on some of our we tend to get obsessed about things really quickly, and really drawn into things very quickly, whether it's with the internet or with the news cycle these days or whatever. And so I think it touches on all of those things that are probably pretty, I don't know, relatable in a non-ghostly context.
Right. That's a good way to put it. I mean, everything you're saying and everything I'm looking at here is definitely of interest, even if it's only a little bit of detail. So we're excited about that one. I do want to ask though, I know we met you while you were promoting Once Upon a River. Princess Sid has been a pretty well-known one as well. Yeah. What has been what is your, I don't want necessarily your favorite movie, but that one project where you're like, I really got to help see this come together in a way that I wanted to see it come together, if that makes sense? Like your crowning jewel of what you've worked on.
I feel like that hasn't happened yet.
Okay.
And I just say that in like an optimistic way. Because I really didn't, during the pandemic, a pandemic shoot you can't be optimistic about much. You kind of just have to like dig in, put the money where you need to put the money into safety and comfort, and just do the thing. So I didn't get to talk much to Galo and everybody else on set, but I'm like a big believer in sustainability and mindfulness and not wasting energy, like resources, people's time. And I see a lot of that kind of stuff go on in our industry. And so I think in my mind, if I'm like, if there's to be a crowning jewel, a project that I really see to fruition, I think it's going to be the first one where I can really enact a lot of those ideals of saying,
Right.
I don't want to have, you know, I would love to like try and make a set where composting is accessible, where recycling is properly accessible, where, you know, folks are encouraged to ride share. Folks are, you know, we're not hiring too many people every day just to have so many hands on set. I'm like not a believer in wasting people's time like that. I don't like when people are just sitting around on set. And that's wasting money too. It's like things of that nature. It all kind of comes full circle. So that's a little bit of the stuff that I think would go into the creation of something that I feel really, really good about. But that is
clear goals for it. So
yeah.
I think it's and all of them seem obtainable too, you know.
I think so. Even if it's baby steps, it's like those
Right.
are things that you can do.
So you could say that right now you're still collecting all of the pieces that will eventually, you know, these are all the experiences. These are all of the ways that you're seeing from production to production, how you would do it, how you envision it, how you can, you know, improve on it or tweak it.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome.
Yeah. I mean, and I will say one thing that I'm so obsessed with Princess Sid and I'm so obsessed with Once Upon a River. And I don't even think of them as like my movies. I think of them more as like my like we were all truly like families on those things, making that happen. And some of those people worked on Restless with us this summer, some of the people who are on that set, and I continue to see them all the time. And one thing that I'm just like, all that I would like to continue doing is have folks come up to me and say like, I really felt so comfortable and cared for on your set. And I didn't feel afraid to ask for anything. And I didn't feel like I was being taken advantage of, because that stuff happens so easily in this industry. And I'm like that at the moment, that's kind of, I feel good that that's a good, you know, piece of feedback that I'm getting from my productions. And that's all that I can at least hope to be getting from here on out.
That's awesome. No, it's great to hear. And it's great to hear that those pieces sounds like are already coming in, like you're already putting them into place and building on. And I don't know, that all sounds great to me. And the one thing you mentioned too, which I always love hearing, and I think it's true for anything, even for many of the big budget projects to your independent projects to doing the things that we do, like Galo, like us creating web series and comics and stuff. I think when you get to create with a group of people, it's like you said, it's like family. It feels like family. That's for sure. I think like Galo, what are we talking? How many? I think every person standing in my wedding on my side is in some capacity has been or is involved with Project Nerd. Yeah. So
that's great.
Like that's
love that.
what it is. Yeah. It's funny too, because my fiance, she's a native to where we're at in Colorado. So I've met so many of her friends and I'm like, I'm sorry, like all my friends are all over the country. Like we haven't had the chance to meet them. Gallo did come out though last summer. So
and I got to meet Aaron, so that was awesome.
But you're still all up in each other's lives too. So
constantly,
it's
constantly forcing Gallo to download new work apps and stuff so we can communicate better and all that. But no, it's
God, do you use Slack?
Yes.
Yes. So
Slack is my nightmare.
Oh, see,
it's not how my brain works. I just can't use it.
You know what? And I'm going to tell you something, Grace. When I got the email from Iggy confirming our meeting today here for their podcast for the recast, I sent Iggy a personal message through Slack. I'm still waiting for a response.
I read it. I didn't know it warranted a response.
He read it.
Sorry, it was a busy. I responded to our group. There is Grace, like 6 of us that are in contact probably 6+ hours a day.
Yeah.
To be realistic with what we're doing. Also stuff behind the scenes that we can't talk about publicly, but also the stuff that we present. And we enjoy every bit of it. And that's why I always hear with these pieces, that's why I think it's like wherever you're creating with a group of people, it's always, I think it's just, one, it's great to surround yourself with people who like to create as well. Like, especially if you're a creative type. But 2, I think when we get to create something, I think that's when we're all at our most genuine happy, our most genuine selves, if that makes sense. So I think that's why these stories always come out. I think, what was it, Galo, like 2 weeks ago, and they said they did 9 days together on set, and it was like family. It was hard for them to walk away from it. And it seems like
it's wild.
Similar stories for what you're saying here too.
Wild. Yeah, there's so much comfort in it. And I think that's part of a nerd thing too, of like finding your community and stuff like that.
Right.
It's rarely given to you. You kind of got to find it.
Right. So what's on the horizon, or what do you want to be on the horizon? Is it a breather before the next thing, or do you already have things lined up?
Sadly, the work that I do is like not a real money maker. So I'm constantly working, and I'm constantly doing like accounting and bookkeeping. We all know how it is.
Yeah.
We all hustle.
Yeah, we all hustle. So I'm kind of like, I think I'm sitting in the world of like doing accounting and bookkeeping and hanging out with my dog for a little bit. But I have 3 or 4 projects that I'm a lead producer or line producer on that are trying to shoot next year.
Oh, fantastic.
So probably, I might even be, actually one of them is kind of at a little jump start right now. So I might even be starting to do like fundraising and some pre-production starting in like November, December, which will be here before we know it. So
yeah, it all moves so fast now. And that's for sure.
Yeah.
Well, that's great to hear. We're looking forward to those feature projects. We're looking forward to the one that you just did. I'm sure Gallo's extra excited. I'm not. Sure. I will not watch it with Galo the first time. That's for sure.
You don't watch it.
Hey, this is where. Hey,
no. Yeah. Exactly.
We transformed that place, though.
You did.
I wonder if you recognize where we shot it.
My dad was. It was funny. And I'll tell you this now, Grace, but we talked, we knew about it, and he knew about it. But, when he starts kind of, change is not his friend. So when he was down there and he's like, they painted the apartment. I go, Dad, I told you they were going to. Don't worry about it. Well, that wasn't in the deal. Like, Dad, trust me.
Free page,
man.
Free page. Go with it.
Man. And I explained to him. I go, Dad, they came in, they painted it, but they have also guaranteed to return it the way it was. So unless, of course, whatever they change you like and want to keep, then they'll do that.
Tell me he kept the paint.
Nope.
I was kind of hoping.
No.
Well, it's so funny to think about, because that becomes so normalized in our industry.
Yeah.
Doing kind of big decisions and big things. Because my folks actually are moving from Ohio to the Chicago burbs.
Okay. Which part?
To Highland Park.
Oh, fantastic.
Got this beautiful little bungalow house. It's like really nice.
Just straight up north.
Yeah. And they're like talking about making all these big decisions of, should we buy this end table or something? The amount of money that we just throw in this industry at buying stuff. Target off of Craigslist and painting houses and painting them back.
Yeah.
It's a lot of stuff. And I think sometimes too, I'm like, from the waste question, I'm like, what could we be avoiding?
Right.
I'm like, there's probably a lot of time and energy and money we could be saving. But at the same time, it's like, for a project like this, when you're in and out in 2 weeks and it's like an apartment. It's not like you're building a house.
Right.
It's, it's efficient financially to just kind of get it done,
Yeah. And it's funny because it was just converted back to the way it was before. And, it's still vacant.
No, it's such a nice place.
No, it's not that. My dad is like,
he's not giving up.
No, my dad loves the place. Okay, he loves that house. It's like his baby. So now that the apartment's vacant, he wants to, do some tile work and do some, and my mom's like, can we rent this place already? Please.
She might be appreciative that he's doing those projects downstairs and not in the house, the part they're living in, though. Yeah.
Yeah, she's just like, oh, he won't stop.
Always a project going on.
Well, I mean, he literally went and bought a table saw. My dad bought a table saw. It was like, oh my God.
I have like sometimes he's retired, right?
No,
he's not.
No. No, he owns his own little income tax office,
right?
And small business office, and he's still there.
Some people just can't do nothing.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I feel like there might be 3 that are here right now, though. So
yeah.
I won't.
Yeah. That's where we got it.
I do have one more story to tell, though, regarding Grace before we close
regarding me.
Yes, I don't know if you remember this. Carrie, who's a bit of a hurricane, especially at Tallgrass. So Carrie works with Project Nerd, and Tallgrass is a blast. So for people that have the opportunity to go, whether it be from fans to filmmakers submitting to people helping get the word out about it, like it's just a blast. And we were there one night, and we'll just say Carrie had a few drinks. We'll put it that way. And Grace says she's from Ohio and went to a University of Ohio too, as well. Not Ohio State, right? Is that right?
Oh yeah, Ohio University. That's right.
Ohio. And so Carrie decides, Galo, that he knows more about Ohio University than Grace does, and about Ohio. Then, do you remember this? The competition that I had to pull up on? I had to find an Ohio State quiz on my phone so Grace could just prove Carrie wrong.
This is like maybe a bad sign because
it was. I think it was already.
I may have been pretty drunk at this point.
I think it was the after party.
Then I was.
So that's the other.
Okay, Iggy, I'm going to ask you this right now. Why were the cameras not rolling for this?
Because this is the point. This is the point of the night. Where
this is drunken trivia. It's the best.
I think
always
this
ends up being
4 in the morning, probably.
Yeah,
oh
probably.
My goodness. Grace.
This was the party that, right?
I know he was there.
So Galo, the structure of this is you go to the gala event, and then you have the party for it, and then there's always an after party, and then which unfortunately those hotels that hotel that was amazing that always housed Tallgrass is closed now because of the pandemic. Would have a room rented just for. Afterwards, you would go. So you would show up at about 2 or 3 a.m. Galo to this place, and you would seriously have a guy who couldn't even speak English, was sitting there making fresh tacos off of his fresh tortillas he's pulling.
I remember that.
There's like 3 coolers, just 3 coolers of drinks. That all this room is for. This hotel room is just rented for this, and you just hang out for another 3 hours. So at this point,
wow,
most of the cameras are put away, and most people are probably appreciative of that, to be honest. So I'm just gonna be honest. But all right, we are winding down on time. Grace, I know you can. Grace Hahn, IMDb. Is there anywhere else people can find you or find maybe more information about Restless soon online?
Yeah, I mean, I really don't think that I'm that interesting. But I am on Instagram. It's Grace _period_, like a grace period. I like giving people a little grace period.
Okay.
And yeah, and Restless, I would say check out Princess Sid. Princess Sid is on, I think it's on Amazon now. It's done the whole circuit, but I think that's one of the most beautiful movies to come out of the past few years. And Once Upon a River is also Amazon right now, which I didn't realize until I just said it. But you can check those things out. And Also watch Work in Progress and watch Easy. Work in Progress is on Showtime. Easy's on Netflix. I was working on those projects as well, and they're very near and dear. Yeah, that's. Otherwise, you won't see me on the next one because I'm behind the camera for sure.
That's all right. We know your fingerprints will be all over it. So
And
we're excited about that.
We're gonna be watching, going, "That is so Grace."
Mom.
Mom.
Grace, thank you again. I'm going to close this out here for the fans. ProjectNerd.com. Obviously, if you're catching us there, head on over to our YouTube, search Project Nerd, or just hit up project-nerd.tv. Actually, I should pull up there we go. ProjectNerd.live, excuse me. You can find all our great videos like this episode of the Nerdcast and the many others we've done, as well as our other great series. We do produce a web series every day of the week now, 6 days a week, plus bite-sized content that you can sink your teeth into. Pretty exciting new series over there as well. Follow us all over the place on social media as we head back out to events like Tallgrass and other fantastic film festivals, as we are pumping out interviews right now for some of the other film festivals we've gone to. Grace, it was a pleasure. We're glad you were on. We'll definitely have to have you back on board some other time as well. But for everybody else, we can continue chatting, but we're going to say goodbye to everybody else. So bye.
Bye.